The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Murphy, to
Thank you,
inquire.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary. You understand, I'm sure, that this is Congress. This is the people's house. We go back to our districts and we actually talk to the people who are at the pump, buying gas in the grocery store, as opposed to President Biden, who's been in D.C. for 50 years. There's been a common theme that throughout his presidency of so many self-inflicted crises that he is tone deaf to what's going on to the American people. And I will point out two things that have been a little bit fallacious in the discussions here today. We talk about the job growth and everything. The unemployment rate prior to the epidemic in the Trump administration was the lowest it had been. During this pandemic, we fired people for not getting vaccinated. People came out of their jobs. All that's happening is people returning to jobs. We also know that during the Great Resignation, many people eliminated themselves from the workforce. So on one hand, people want to blame the pandemic for what's going on today, and other people want to take credit for what's going on today. We know for a fact that since Biden took office, the inflationary rate in this country rose. It was 7.9% the day prior to the Russian invasion. So to blame fuel prices and everything on the invasion of the Russian dictator is absolutely incorrect. So I would ask you this: how then, in the face of today's skyrocketing inflation, which we all agree is a regressive tax, where we see fuel prices going through the roof, we're about to see food prices double, how can you say and justify that adding $4 trillion in taxes are good for the American people and the inflation that the average American, which Biden just doesn't understand, how can it be good for the average American?
Well, especially given that gas prices, which are related to global oil prices, which we have only modest control over, can put in place some policies to affect it, but it is a global market, and high food prices, which are also being affected by
but how can these taxes, how can these $4 trillion in taxes help the American people?
First of all, they will enable deficit reduction, which will complement the Federal Reserve's tighter monetary policy. And second of all, they'll enable the financing of government programs that will help to bring down.
So as we tax people, we take more of their money away from them when they have less discretionary spending now because their real wages have actually decreased.
Those proposed tax increases won't mean not a penny more spent on taxes by any household making $400,000 or less.
That's a lot of people.
Entirely on very high-income individuals and corporations that also should be paying their fair share.
I understand. Thank you. Let me just finish up with one other question, because corporations are mom-and-pop businesses. They're people with sandwich shops. They're people that run their own grocery stores. Let me follow one thing. The Biden administration now wants to try to plan to cancel so much of student debt, up to $1.3 trillion in student debt. This is, again, another regressive tax initiative because most of the individuals who would benefit from that are higher income earners. It's well documented, and Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record one particular document that canceling student debt will add to inflation. Do you believe that's a good idea?
So ordered. Without objection, it is included in the record.
No decisions have been made about student debt.
Do you agree that it would add to the inflationary pressures of the country today?
It depends on how it's done.
I'm going to proceed now to conclude.